The dust of Millbrook County clung to everything in the summer of 1887. Boots, hearts, and broken dreams. It even found its way into Belle Palmer's life, settling heavy over her hopes. At 24, she was known across 3 counties for crafting the finest lavender soap west of the Mississippi. Her hands were calloused, her back ached from work, but her determination burned bright as ever. What she didn't have was patience for fools, liars, or men who gambled away women's hard-earned money. Leonard Bryant had just proven himself, all three. "You spent my $27 on what exactly?" Belle's voice carried through her small room above Murphy's general store. The evening light cut across her face, highlighting eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Leonard shifted uneasily, his hat twisting between trembling fingers. "Belle, honey, listen. Colin Hughes said there's a mining venture up by Cedar Ridge." "Sure thing," he said. "We triple what we put in." Belle's green eyes flashed. "Triple, Leonard? That money came from 6 months of backbreaking work, from me selling soaps to every ranch wife between here and Stockton, from me standing over a boiling pot till my hands cracked." Leonard took a step back. He'd seen Belle angry before, but never like this. "It was just bad luck, Belle. Next time." "Next time," Belle's voice dropped low and steady. "There won't be a next time." He didn't see it coming. "Take off that shirt," she said. "What?" "That shirt and the vest and the boots I bought you last Christmas. Every stitch I paid for, you'll leave behind." Leonard laughed, thinking she was joking. But Belle didn't flinch. Slowly, with a mixture of shame and disbelief, he removed each item until he stood in his worn undershirt and socks. "Now get out," she said. "And if I see you near Main Street again, I'll send Sheriff Parker after you." He muttered something about her being alone forever, but his words barely reached her over the slam of the door. The sound echoed like freedom. For the first time in months, Belle could breathe. That night she sat at her small table, surrounded by bottles of rose water, lavender oil, and jars of lye. The scents usually brought her peace. Tonight they only reminded her of how fragile her life had become. $27 gone, 6 months of labor stolen, and yet she refused to break. By sunrise, Belle was back at Benson Wagner's mercantile arranging goods for customers who'd never guessed the storm behind her calm face. The store owner, a thin man with eyes like cold nails, watched her with interest. "Palmer," he called from behind his ledger. "Mrs. Morrison asked for more of your rose soap. Seems her daughter's getting married." Belle perked up. "I can have 12 bars ready by Friday." Wagner smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "She already ordered from my supplier in Denver. Half your price, fancier wrapping." The words struck hard. Mrs. Morrison had been one of Belle's best customers, but she asked for my soap. Business is business. Wagner interrupted. "Now I've been thinking. You keep making your soaps, but under my brand. I'll pay you 40 cents on the dollar." Belle froze. 40 cents on the dollar meant she'd earn barely 10 cents per bar. "That's theft," she said quietly. "That's business," he replied. "Take it or leave it." Belle clenched her jaw. She couldn't afford to lose her job. Not after Leonard, not with rent due. But working for Wagner's profit meant giving up her independence, the one thing she'd fought hardest to keep. She managed a tight smile. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," Wagner warned. "Big folks will be at Miss Callahan's engagement party this Saturday. Might be a good time to announce our new arrangement." That night, Belle worked by lamplight, her hands moving automatically as her thoughts spun. Was this her life now, to work herself raw while men like Leonard and Vonner took everything? Or was there still a chance, however small, to start over on her own terms? Saturday came, bringing golden sunlight and the buzz of celebration. The Callahan Ranch stood grand and proud, lit by paper lanterns strung across the yard. Belle arrived in her best blue dress, borrowed wagon creaking behind her. She told herself she came only out of family duty, but deep down she hoped the night might bring something new. Her mother spotted her instantly. "Belle, darling, that color brings out your eyes. There's someone you must meet." Mother Belle sighed. "Not tonight." "Nonsense," her mother said, already pulling her toward the house. "Quinton Durham is here, the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties," and unmarried Belle had heard the name. Everyone had. Quinton Durham owned 12,000 acres and 3,000 head of cattle. They said he could buy half of Millbrook if he wanted. She had no interest in rich men. They came with rich problems. Still, when she saw him across the room, standing alone by the punch table, she couldn't look away. He was tall, well over 6'5", with the quiet presence of someone used to command. His dark hair was touched with sun, his suit perfectly cut, but worn like he didn't care much for formality. He looked powerful and lonely. Belle turned to escape the matchmaking crowd, slipping out the side door into the cool night. The lantern swayed in the breeze. For a moment, she breathed freely again. Then a deep voice spoke behind her. Not much for dancing. She turned, and there he was. Quinton Durham himself, standing just far enough to be polite, but close enough that she caught the faint scent of leather and pine. His eyes were kind, curious. Not much for being paraded around like a prize here, Belle said, before she could stop herself. Quinton's laughter was rich and genuine. Then we already have something in common. And just like that, the night shifted. For the first time in a long while, Belle felt seen, not as a worker or a woman to fix, but as herself. The night air outside the Callahan Ranch felt cooler than any ballroom breeze, carrying the scent of prairie grass and apple blossoms. Belle had slipped away to escape her mother's endless introductions. Yet the moment she turned, she found herself face to face with Quinton Durham. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, posture neat and careful, but his eyes, dark as river stone, held a quiet warmth. "Not much for crowds," he asked. "Not much for being displayed like a prize," Belle answered, surprised by her own boldness. Quinton's low laugh melted the tension between them. "Then we share an understanding. I've spent the entire evening avoiding every ambitious mother within 50 mi." That made Belle smile before she could stop herself. "I hear they call you the most eligible man in Millbrook County." "Eligible, maybe," he said, tilting his head, "but not particularly charming. I tend to scare off anyone expecting poetry and promises." "Then perhaps you need someone who appreciates plain talk," Belle said. His gaze softened. "Perhaps I do." For a long moment, neither spoke. The music from inside drifted through the open windows. A fiddle tune that sounded like memories in May. Fireflies blinked among the oaks. Belle should have gone back inside, should have remembered her mother's warnings about men who live behind large fences and larger fortunes. But something about Quinton's presence steadied her heartbeat. Instead of quickening it, he broke the silence first. "Your mother tells me you make perfumes and soaps." "I do," Belle said cautiously with my own hands. "Honest work, though it doesn't impress many, honest work always impresses me," Quinton replied. "My mother used to say that the truest measure of a person is what they can build from nothing." "Sounds like you've been building for a long time." Belle looked down at her gloved hands. "Building, yes, but sometimes it feels like I'm just trying not to fall apart." Quinton studied her quietly, then offered a small nod. "You remind me of this ranch after a storm, bruised but still standing." Before she could find an answer, laughter erupted from the house. The announcement of cake, perhaps, or a new round of dancing. The sound felt miles away. "Would you walk with me?" Quinton asked suddenly. Belle hesitated, only a heartbeat before nodding. They followed a narrow path behind the barn, where lantern light faded into silver moonshine. Grass whispered under their boots. When they reached the pasture fence, Quinton rested his forearms on the rail and looked out toward the horizon. "I spend most days out there," he said quietly. 12,000 acres of land, and some days it still feels empty." "Empty," he nodded. "A man can own all the land he wants, Miss Palmer, but it's the quiet at the end of the day that reminds him what he's missing." Belle felt a strange ache twist inside her. She knew that kind of quiet, the kind that waited behind closed doors after everyone else's laughter faded. "I know something about that," she said softly about emptiness, pretending to be peace. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. When Belle finally spoke, her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You strike me as the sort of man who doesn't do anything halfway, Mr. Durham." He smiled faintly. "And you strike me as the sort of woman who doesn't let anyone tell her what to do." "Then we're even." The distant fiddle changed to a slower song. Sweet and yearning, Quinton straightened. "I should warn you, I'm a terrible dancer," he said. "Maybe you just haven't found the right partner," Belle answered. He offered his hand, rough and warm from years of work. Belle hesitated, then placed her own in his. They moved gently, swaying to music carried on the wind. the world shrinking until there was nothing but two silhouettes and the soft rustle of grass. For the first time in months, Belle let herself stop thinking about Leonard, about Wagner, about all the ways life had tried to break her. Standing there in Quinton Durham's steady arms, she felt something she hadn't known she'd lost. Trust. Later, when she returned home, she couldn't stop replaying the night. The laughter, the quiet, the moment his thumb brushed the back of her hand as if it belonged there. The next morning, a note arrived. The handwriting was bold, deliberate. Miss Palmer, would you do me the honor of joining me for supper tomorrow evening? I promise to keep my questions about soap making to a minimum, and I'll do my best not to burn the roast. Q. Durham. Belle read the words 3 times, her heart betraying her reason each time. She told herself it was a business invitation. She told herself it meant nothing. And yet, when she borrowed a horse the following evening and rode 12 min north to the Durham ranch, her hands trembled on the reins. The ranch house rose from the prairie like a fortress built of sunlight and stone. When Quinton opened the door, his smile was soft but certain. "You came," he said. "I was curious," she replied. "I was hoping you would be dinner smelled of roasted beef and fresh bread." Quinton poured her water himself, talking about cattle and weather until she relaxed. By dessert, they were laughing, really laughing, about his clumsy attempts at baking. After the meal, they moved to the porch where the stars spilled across the sky like scattered lanterns. "Belle," he said after a long silence, "you've been alone a long time, haven't you?" She blinked at the directness long enough to know I prefer peace over promises. Quinton nodded slowly. "Then let me earn your peace, not steal it." His words sank deep, quiet as the wind moving through the tall grass. When Belle rode home that night, the moon followed her like a witness. Something had changed. The rancher, who was too rich, too quiet, too far above her station, had somehow slipped past the walls she thought would keep her safe. And though she told herself it was just a friendship, the warmth in her chest told another story. 3 weeks passed and Millbrook County buzzed with whispers. Some said Belle Palmer had caught the richest man in the territory. Others claimed Quinton Durham had finally gone soft. Belle ignored them all. She worked longer hours mixing new batches of lavender and rose soap, trying to lose herself in the scent of hard work and purpose. But no amount of perfume could cover the memory of Quinton's voice or the warmth of his eyes. Every few days a note arrived. Short, careful words written in a hand that spoke of honesty more than poetry. "The spring calves are healthy. The prairie is full of wildflowers today. You'd like the sunset tonight." Each message was simple, but it stayed with her long after she tucked it away. Quinton Durham wasn't chasing her with fancy gifts. He was giving her something rarer, consistency. Still, fear lingered. Belle had learned the hard way that promises could crumble overnight. Men said one thing and did another. Love, she decided, was a luxury she couldn't afford. Then one afternoon, Benson Wagner summoned her into his office. The look on his face told her it wouldn't be good. "Palmer," he began, tapping a pencil against his ledger. "I hear you've been visiting Mr. Durham's ranch quite a bit." Belle's chin lifted. "That's none of your business." Quote, "Oh, but it is. Folks talk. And if I'm going to have a worker who's spending her evenings entertaining rich ranchers, I need to know if her attention's still on her job." Belle's hands tightened around the counter. "My work speaks for itself." "Does it?" Wagner sneered. "Because I'm thinking of replacing your soaps with Denver products. They're cheaper and I don't have to worry about the maker getting distracted." That was it. The final thread snapped. "You know what, Mr. Wagner," Belle said, untying her apron. "You can keep your Denver soaps and your gossip." I quit. His eyes widened. "You won't find another position in this county." "Maybe not," she said, voice steady. "But I'd rather start over honest than stay here ashamed." When Belle walked out of that store, the air felt brighter than it had in months. She had no savings, no safety net, only pride and the faint hope that courage might be enough. By evening, word had spread, and by the next morning, Quinton Durham was standing outside her door. He looked as though he'd ridden all night. Dust on his boots, worry in his eyes. "Mrs. Singleton told me what happened," he said. "You really quit." "I did. What will you do now?" "I don't know," Belle forced a laugh. "Maybe sell soap from a wagon. Maybe fail spectacularly. But at least I'll fail on my own terms." Quinn studied her for a long moment, then stepped closer. "You could also start again with help. I don't want charity. I'm not offering charity, he said softly. I'm offering partnership. Belle hesitated. You mean business. I mean life. He said, a life together. I want you beside me, not Clear's throat, behind me. Your name on your shop door, your hands in your work, your laughter in my house. She tried to answer, but emotion closed her throat. Quinton took a slow breath. Belle Palmer, will you marry me?